Hello, I'm Daryl McIntyre. Once again, we have our Raised with Care Stewardship Session. I hope you've been enjoying this series as we've continued through this fall, and we are just over the halfway point in our series tonight. We are going to be focusing. See, I had pork on the fork stuck in my head, and I knew that eventually someone would come out. So we're going to focus on the pork industry tonight. So just over halfway through, we've been showing these in live stream as we talk with Alberta livestock and animal owners and talk about good health practices, trying to maintain good health practices on your operation, and also take a look at some of the major health issues that are facing the variety of industries, how to identify and how to treat and how to deal with some of those particular issues. We'll also be looking at prevention strategies, and a big part of what we've been talking about is having a good relationship with the veterinary team, how that can help with creating good overall animal health, but also that can also help your bottom line. At the end of the day, prevention is a lot less expensive than having to treat after the fact. So in the upcoming weeks, we'll be hosting a few more live sessions with animal groups that range from those who are found in backyard agriculture, smaller sort of mom and pop little operations, or one or two animals in the backyard. We'll also talk about small ruminant animals like sheep and goats, and then we'll also talk about companion animals in another session down the road here for a little bit. Tonight's conversation, though, is focusing on the pork industry, and it does feature larger scale commercial operations or those medium-sized commercial operations, but there are also a lot of people who might have something going on their own farm in a smaller manner, small operations that would not be considered to be large commercial ones. We're going to touch on a few things with those as well. So, but in that group, you'll also benefit from next week's stewardship session on backyard agriculture. So you'll get a double hit for some of you in this. Just to remind you, if you have missed any of the past sessions, you can still watch them. We've talked about the beef industry, we've talked about horses, we've talked about beekeeping, we've talked about poultry so far, and you can revisit those conversations just by going to raisedwithcare.ca and then follow the links. And again, this one as well, if you want to share with some of your friends or colleagues who have not been able to join the live stream, you'll be able to access this particular program later on. For those of you who are on this in real time, we really want you to get involved if you can. If you have comments or questions, you can do so and send them to us through your YouTube Live or Facebook Live, however you're watching it. We'd really like to hear from you. It really adds to the conversation when we get some other perspectives coming at us. And all of these available on the website, raisedwithcare.ca. So we're talking about the pork industry. Let's just give you a few facts and figures before we get to our guest, who we're very excited to have with us tonight. So here's just a few stats. If you're wondering where we're at, Alberta is the fourth largest pork producing province in Canada, close to 2.9 million hogs marketed in Alberta. That was in 2019. Canada ranks 7th in pork production around the world. Also has the Pork Excellence Program, which was established by the Canadian Pork Council. So that really focuses on food safety, which is vitally important, and animal care and traceability. And it's programs like that have helped the Canadian pork industry become recognized for around the world for producing top quality pork. And it is so important to ensure that it's safely done and well done and follows all the rules, especially in an international market. So I want to introduce our guest, and a lot of you in the pork industry probably already know him. Pretty well known in the pork industry. He's Dr. Egan Brockhoff. And let me just give you a little bit of background on, if you're not familiar with him, on why he is a great get for tonight's stewardship session. Strong advocate of veterinary profession, agriculture, and agribusiness overall. He and his family operate a third-generation mixed farm in central Alberta, and as with many of our guests, they're hands-on as well, not just treating other people's animals, but also having their own. He's the president and practicing veterinarian with the Prairie Swine Health Services out of Red Deer here in Alberta, and also Steinbach, Manitoba. He's a graduate of the Western College of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Saskatchewan, and in 2010 he started providing consulting services in Asia, which were focused on veterinary training, infection prevention, control, enhancing biosecurity, which is very important. We'll be talking about that in this session. And in addition to his practice life, he's also taught swine medicine at the University of Calgary and the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine since 2008. So lots in the background of this gentleman. He served in a number of professional and industry leadership roles, including president of the Alberta Veterinary Medical Association a few years ago, and also in 2014 was a recipient of the Alberta Pork Congress Industry Ambassador Award, and in 2020 the recipient of the CVMA Food Animal Veterinarian of the Year. You're a big deal. Dr. Egan Brockhoff joining us tonight. I don't know, maybe it's hard to sit through and listen to me go through all that, but it's important. You've been doing this a long time. You've been involved in this industry for a long time. Just give me some of the background of why you have such a passion for it, because you couldn't do this and do all those things and travel all around the world without having that passion for it.
Yeah. My family, growing up in central Alberta on a family farm, I absolutely loved agriculture, worked with livestock all the time, have a huge passion for all that we do in Alberta with agriculture, with animal agriculture. We worked really close with our veterinary clinic when I was a farm boy. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the veterinarians that I knew then, I still work with today. And so, I just have a huge passion for the veterinary profession. I absolutely love animal agriculture and all the animals I get to work with.
Love is a great thing, but it's also important work, because this is a major industry in our country and around the world, obviously. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in the early days when I was in the profession, you're just so focused on, just taking care of animals and working with farmers. And then you get to see, as the years go by, just how big this sector is, how many people are involved with it, the impact we have around the world with our genetics, with our quality of food production, and getting involved with all of that has been extremely exciting.
We have a framework that we generally go through with the Stewardship Session, so I'm going to start going down that. And the first one is really to identify some major animal health issues. We will talk domestically, because clearly that's where all of us are, but there's a major international issue that we're dealing with right now. We don't want to see show up in Canada. Just tell us a little bit about the African swine fever virus.
Yeah, so the African swine fever virus has been around for decades and decades. But in the mid-2000s, in 2007, that virus jumped out of North Africa into Georgia, into Eastern Europe, and it has spread rapidly across Eastern Europe. And then in 2018, it moved into Southeast Asia, China, and South, and it just continues to spread.
And the impact has been phenomenal, I guess, is one way to put it.
Yeah, the impact has been overwhelming. This virus is a lethal virus. It's not a very infectious virus. It doesn't move fast. But whatever it infects, it kills. And so, estimates today are that nearly half of Southeast Asia's pork production has been killed by this virus. And so, we're talking more than 100 million animals dead from this virus, whether it be a backyard pig, a family with one pig in their backyard or in their household, or a farm with 1,000 sows. This virus doesn't discriminate, and the impact has been huge.
And so there has to be a pretty intense focus on trying to keep it out of Canada. But is it a matter of not if it gets here, but when?
Yeah, we think this virus has already been at Canada's borders. We think it's coming in on airplanes, in people's luggage. This virus survives the curing process, so people that carry uncured meat products in their luggage, we're confident that this virus has made it to our airports. And so the efforts that we put in place at our borders to make sure that people aren't bringing in food, efforts we've undergone with different transmission pathways like feed ingredients, we're putting a huge amount of effort into keeping this virus, if not out of the country, out of our pigs.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people who go through the airport and go through all those questions, and they may roll their eyes because they don't really understand the ramifications or how something can be transmitted. Have you visited a farm? Oh, no, I wasn't on any farms, but there are other ways that it could happen. So it's so important to be aware of these issues and then help to educate others. So people are maybe not in their industry, but if they're asking, and they probably get asked questions about it, that's something that they can also advocate.
Yeah, the most dangerous thing we could do now is go to an airport in an infected country and grab one of those little meat treats and bring it back in our luggage, have half of it, decide we don't want to finish it, throw it into our kitchen scrap pile, and then feed those scraps to our pig in the backyard. Right there, That is exactly how foot and mouth disease virus was introduced into Canada so many decades ago. Just that simple little story.
Yeah.
And so we want to avoid that.
These things can find, I have Jeff Goldblum in my head from Jurassic Park. Life finds a way. Well, this can find a way. So we have to try and shut it down. And biosecurity obviously is a really important part of that, and we're going to deal with that more a little bit later. But for Alberta and Canadian pork producers, what kind of health issues are sort of on the ground right now? What kind of things are you seeing clients deal with?
Yeah, we deal with a number of viral and bacterial diseases on a daily basis. So in 2014, PED virus arrived in Canada. That virus came up from the United States via China. And that virus has moved across North America. And so we deal with that virus. It's come into Canada a little bit. We continue to suppress it and push it back, but we deal with that virus. And that's a devastating virus to piglets.
And that's pretty much piglets are the only ones that are really likely to be killed by that. Older animals might have it, but they'll be okay.
It's one of those viruses that pigs less than 10 days of age are likely to die. It's just so aggressive so fast. A mature, older animal, they're going to get diarrhea, they're going to vomit, they're going to feel bad for a week or so, but it's not going to kill them. This is a virus, though, to baby piglets. The mortality level is nearly 100%.
And infectious?
Highly infectious. This virus just wants to spread. It spreads easily, so biosecurity is a real key thing with that. It's a fecal-oral spread, so manure in a dirty truck, manure on a wheel, spreading manure on a field could move it to the neighboring farm. So really wants to move this virus.
And treatment of something like that is you can treat the older ones, but not the younger ones. So really, you just have to clean everything out.
Yeah, there's no treatment for this virus. We have some vaccines that are partially effective, but for those piglets 10 days of age, it goes in and it kills all the little cells inside their small intestine, and they die within days. Larger animals, they'll survive it and recover nicely and have immunity to that virus.
And because I'm not in this industry, so I was fairly surprised. Those of you who are in the industry won't be, but influenza is a major problem with pigs.
Yeah, so we have influenza in our commercial pigs. We have influenza in all forms of pigs, backyard or commercial. And pigs aren't getting out. They don't get in the truck. They don't drive around. They don't go to Walmart.
They're not going to school.
They're not hanging out at the mall.
Yeah.
Right? And so, our pigs in our barns, they're exposed to the people that work with them. And so that's where we get the influenza. So as flu season starts to come in the fall with people, we see flu come into the pig barns. And it moves around the barns just like it would move through a population of school kids, for example.
Do the larger commercial operations and then the smaller backyard could still be 30 pigs or something.
Yeah.
But are they dealing with different health issues, or is it all pretty much the same pot that we're dealing with?
Yeah, it's all similar pot with different emphasis, I would say. In our commercial farms, we see the traditional old school diseases are really well controlled. There's been a long history of vaccination. Third generation farms, they've really learned how to deal with these traditional old school diseases. When we look at the small holding producers, the backyard producers, this may be brand new for them. And so a lot of those old diseases that we weren't seeing that many years ago, we're starting to see again resurface in the backyard production.
Could they end up getting back into a commercial operation? Or because there's enough protocols in the larger commercial ones that it's not going to be an issue?
Yeah, there's always a risk, right? There's a risk of people bringing it in. There's a risk of bringing it in on footwear. There's a risk of things being moved through aerosol. And so we always have to be careful. Aerosol can transmit so many things. Area spread. We saw, I saw this great research project years ago where someone injected a snowball with a virus. They just put a snowball, injected it, put it in the wheel well of their truck, drove it for 10 kilometers, let the snowball fall out. Then they sampled that snowball after it went through a truck wash, found virus, they were able to then get that virus to go again and infect a pig.
Wow.
And so it is so easy to move things around, and so we're always worried whether, you've got a backyard or a commercial barn with 4 walls. We're always worried about how disease can move.
Wow. These stewardship sessions initially were the impetus was originally on antimicrobial stewardship. In a lot of ways, because of the changing of rules a couple of years ago, most producers are unable to just throw antibiotics at a problem anymore. So what is being done to primarily treat our animals in the pork industry? Surely, there would be some antibacterial drugs that would go and be used and targeted, I would think.
Yeah, the pork sector has had the Canadian Quality Assurance, the Canadian Pork Excellence Program now for more than a decade. The original version of quality assurance, came out with a drug use policy. And so for 15 years already, or 20 years, probably getting close to 20 years, pork producers have already been working with constraints on how they use antimicrobials. We've updated that program to the Canadian Pork Excellence Program now with a brand new drug use policy. Pork producers have to, record treatments, do diagnostics, do due diligence before they ever use an antimicrobial. And so, there's been a lot of oversight over veterinary antibiotics in these farms for many years, and it just continues to tighten up year after year.
So what are the primary treatments we're using, for prevention? There's biosecurity, obviously, and again, we'll talk more about that in a bit. But, what are the other prevention and maintenance type of techniques that we're using, either vaccines or pain management?
So we focus a lot of our efforts on vaccination. We focus a lot of efforts on using strategic vaccination to understand what diseases are in the farm and how we could mitigate that. We flow the pigs through the barns in intentional ways to segregate disease as well. And so just good barn flow management can keep disease down. Biosecurity, always a key thing. Treating and hospitalizing sick pigs quickly so they don't get a chance to spread disease to the rest of their pen mates or population group. Those are critical things. But we focus a huge amount of effort on prevention. We use pain management tools, and a healthy, happy animal, less likely to shed disease. Yeah. And so even good pain management helps us minimize disease transmission.
Well, and that's part of having a good overall animal health protocol, right? That's part of working with a veterinarian or a veterinarian team and ensuring that overall animal health is that there's a plan in place.
Yeah. And the farms we work with, we spend a lot of time building those disease prevention plans. We spend a lot of time focusing on animal welfare, keeping the animals happy, keeping them healthy. If we find a bacteria or a virus on the farm, we go so far as to genotype it. We want to know the specific genotype of the bacteria, of the virus. We do antimicrobial resistance panels, and we choose antibiotics based on what we know will work. And so we're very precise. There's none of this broad spectrum, sort of treatment like you so often hear about. That doesn't happen. We're very focused. We're very precise, treating what we have to when we have to.
I know that we've had a few audio problems, things being a little fuzzy and laggy. Apparently, hopefully that's been rectified and you can hear us better. We'd love to hear from you as well as we continue our conversation. So if you have something you want to add in, you can go ahead and do so either through YouTube Live or Facebook Live. Some of you have commented already about the audio, so perhaps you have some other things you want to add in as well. You were talking about figuring out the genetics, just the advances that we've made. Canada is doing pretty well in this area, is it not? As far as with that science and using it.
Yeah, Canada has, we have an amazing pork sector, really well supported by universities, by the veterinary schools, by our federal, provincial government with research. And so, I think of some of the experiences I've had around the world where, things are very basic still. And I look at the work we do here where, we have created these barns where we know exactly what bacteria is affecting what pigs at what age, what virus may circulate at what age within the population. And that's how allows us to be strategic, intentional, and precise, and really focus on great prevention. And I mean, great prevention goes so far.
There's a lot at stake here. So we've talked about the commercial operations, and surely we've seen with incidents in the past, and it's certainly made the news where there have been issues with our pork industry and international trade and all that kind of thing. So explain to me why somebody with a smaller backyard operation needs to be as focused on that kind of thing as some of the larger ones, because perhaps they're doing it for their own use or for some friends or something like that. So how does that compare, and what are the potential pitfalls with that?
Yeah, I mean, the Canadian pork sector is a $24 billion sector, highly respected all around the world. We produce safe and wholesome food, and we're highly sought after. We produce amazing pork, and people want it all over the world. Whether you have 10,000 pigs or 3 pigs, though, if we get a foreign animal disease in this country, our borders close immediately. And so it's absolutely critical that we work with all pork producers. Anyone who owns a pig should understand the risk that this could have on the Canadian economy. Not just farms and farm families and the feed mill people that supply them and the grain farmers that supply them grain, but everyone in the chain, whether it be a family that just hauls pigs, their whole living is to drive trucks and haul pigs, or the processors or the exporters. They're all part of this very important chain, and we want to protect that.
But there's another element in there that people don't have as much control over, and that's actually wild pigs or wild boar. You have some concerns about that, and especially sort of the biosecurity with some of the smaller operations and how there could be some interaction.
Yeah, we have some wild pigs in Canada. We have a very small wild pig problem, but we know we have wild pigs, and so. We know we have wild pigs in Alberta. We know that we have them in our neighboring province in Saskatchewan. And so when you have outdoor pigs, those pigs have a potential interface with wild pigs. And so we want outdoor producers to be extremely careful because, exposure to those wild pig populations may not have any implications for disease today, but they may in the future. And so it's absolutely critical that we continue to deal with our wild pig population. Wild boar are not a native species to Canada. They're an introduced species. And when they get out into the wild, they do very, very well. They survive and thrive too well, too well. And so they present a risk. And so we want to be on top of that. We do not want to get into a situation like some of our neighbors to the south. The state of Texas talks about 2.5 to 3 million wild pigs just in that one state alone. And, we don't want to be in that situation.
Now, we do have some questions coming in, but I want to sort of deal with them a little later. So I promise we will get to your questions, and then we'll have lots of time to get in with a few more. But just on one more thing on the wild boar, there's even a hotline for you. So clearly this is being taken very seriously. There's even a hotline for reporting where they are, right?
Yeah, all of our provincial governments have wild boar hotlines, if you will. The federal government is also interested. The Canadian pork farmers are working closely with federal, provincial, territorial leaders to keep this on the radar, because this could become a real problem if we let it go.
According to my notes, 310 farm, 310-3276 here in Alberta, the hotline. So there you go. So let's deal with biosecurity, because it sounds like this is probably the key as far as prevention and to try and protect the animal health. That biosecurity, would you put that at number 1 in the priority list?
Yeah, biosecurity is absolutely the king of disease prevention. And so, we divide biosecurity into 2 big categories. Exclusion biosecurity, so keeping things off your farm.
Yeah.
And then internal management, so internal biosecurity, which is managing the diseases you have. And external biosecurity, all of those things we do to keep disease off our farms is one of the most critical things we can do to prevent disease from becoming an issue. And so in the pork sector, we push biosecurity unlike any other livestock commodity.
The separation, but the environmental factors within an operation are also a huge part of that biosecurity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we call that internal biosecurity, everything that happens within the barn. And so managing pig flow, vaccination, controlling disease through strategic treatment or strategic movement. All of that keeps disease at a minimum, which then keeps, the risk of community spread or within the province spread very low. Our exclusion biosecurity measures, though, so having 4 walls around the barn, making people shower in before they come to the site, creating those firm lines of separation. So, you come into the barn. To get into the barn, you have to punch code yourself into the barn. To get into the barn, you have to know that code. You've got little boot covers on, so you're not shedding things off your feet. You step in, you're taking your shoes off, you're stepping over a barrier, you're taking all of your clothes off. Then you go through a shower that has an entry and then a far side exit, a pass-through shower. So you get all showered off, you put on barn-specific clothes on the other side, and then you work with the pigs. So we do that for the people. Anytime a truck comes to a farm, it has to be washed, disinfected, and thermal assist dried before it arrives. Everything entering the site, whether it be feed or people or equipment or supplies, all has to go through a strict biosecurity protocol. And if we adhere to that, we stop disease movement.
That's in larger or mid-size commercial operations, because there are some individual mom and pop operations that could still have quite a number of hogs and be selling them into the market. But is that kind of a protocol over the top for a much smaller organization, or what is your advice to them to still follow biosecurity rules? Maybe they're not as far down the road. It's not like biohazard or like in the movies, but they still have to follow some idea in order to keep everything safe.
Yeah, disease doesn't care whether there's 1 pig on the farm or 1 million pigs on the farm. Disease doesn't care. And so when we're working with smaller farms that have 1 or 2 pigs, for a lot of them, these animals are extremely valuable. Yeah. They're a rare breed, they're a heritage breed, and they don't want to see them get infected. Yeah. And so maybe they don't have to go so far as filtering incoming air, but establishing a simple little boot change at the end of their corral goes a long way to stop disease from getting tracked in. And we see that, I see that as I work with farms all over the world. Lots of backyard farms, smallholder farms, if we just put a simple boot change from, you leave the house, you walk over to the corral, you step into a little Rubbermaid container and you switch boots and you go into the pen. We've seen that work to prevent PED virus, African swine fever virus in Europe and Asia. We know these little steps can really help everybody. And we see them do it.
Yeah. And I want to make sure that I'm making it clear that I'm not harping on the smaller ones, because I know you care about your animals, but it's clearly there's a lot of information out there. It's a matter of how much gets transferred to some individuals. So how important is it for obviously the larger commercial operations are going to basically have you on retainer. They're dealing with you all the time. Yeah. But it's really important for everybody to have some kind of a good relationship. So you create that health protocol so you know the questions to ask and the answers to get.
Yeah. We really have been trying really hard at my veterinary practice to reach out to smallholder producers, people that are new to pork production. One of the veterinarians on my team, Dr. Kelsey Gray, she is an absolute powerhouse in working with backyard production. And so she has worked with the BC government and BC Pork to build a large reference manual for all the basics of pork production, including biosecurity, basic nutrition, and that's a great big manual. And now we're working on boiling it down into little key points. But we really want to engage with everyone, whether they have 2 pigs or 2,000 pigs. We want to engage with them and help them keep their animals healthy, keep them safe for whatever purpose they have them for.
Yeah, always nice to have a little handbook so you can go and take it. How much of this is available right now, and can people access some of this information, or is it still just in the works of trying to create it and bring it out?
Yeah, so this is all available online already today. People can access it through the Canadian Pork Council's website. They can access it through BC Pork's website. I believe Alberta Pork, Saskatchewan Pork, Manitoba Pork all have links to these resources. And you've really seen those provincial pork boards, start to reach out with this type of information. People want pigs. Let's help them raise them.
Yeah. So, just want to go over to the comments, and I have some more things to go, but I want to touch on this. Tara talking about benefiting from the support of you and your team. Smaller, about 50 protocols, farm specific for vaccines and parasite control. So I haven't really talked too much about parasite control, but there are things you can do in order to help deal with some diseases for vaccines, and you can expand on that if you'd like, but also on parasites.
Yeah, there's no question we have a set, and Tara's been so fun to work with. So fun to work with. I love when she texts me pictures and sends me pictures. But, we have set up protocols for outdoor pigs, right? And so we're more worried about parasites. We don't find many parasites anymore at all in our indoor pigs, but we still find parasites outside. And so we use different products to prevent and for treatment. And so everyone with outdoor pigs should be treating for parasites. We should think about diseases like common old diseases like swine erysipelas. Those are really common diseases in outdoor productions. Sometimes we see atrophic rhinitis, right? A classic old disease where the pigs just start sneezing, so much so that their little noses will bend.
Wow.
And so occasionally we have to deal with that. And so, I think, if you have outdoor sows, we really want you to vaccinate for parvo, lepto, and erysipelas. We want to do your baby pigs with erysipelas for sure, and potentially a few other pathogens, and definitely, deworm those pigs.
And there really is sort of a trend. I don't know if it's a huge trend, but there is a bit of one for more of a sort of a natural environment for the animals, because we want them to have a happy little piggy life, and then continue on. So that is changing a little bit. A lot of people are trying to move in that direction, are they not?
Yeah, all farms across Canada are moving in that direction. Our commercial farms are all participating in the animal care program now that the Canadian Pork Council's developed. And that requires enrichment, toys, things to keep them entertained. Pigs outside, absolutely. Pigs are grazing animals. They like to root and dig and rototill everything. And so, we have to be conscious that as they're digging up soil and digging into things, they're going to find things. And so, worms are one of those.
Well, and Tara just throws in another thing that many people think that there's less risk for parasites and other diseases with pasture operations. That's perhaps a common misconception.
Yeah, a really common misconception. Our commercial pigs, we're doing fecal floats, we're doing oral fluid sampling all the time to ensure those pigs are free of parasites, and we have a lot of control over that. Yeah. We hardly see parasites indoors anymore. But outdoor pigs, we see parasites frequently. And these are easy to treat, easy to control parasites. We know we're there. We see some internal parasites, and we also see some external parasites. And so we're consciously aware that we should be recommending those for people all the time.
And dealing with piglets. So Brittany, you were one of the first to put a question in. I'm getting to you almost last here, so sorry about that, but thank you for the question. Your suggested protocol for newborn piglets, vaccines, that type of thing. Obviously, you talked earlier about PED being particularly dangerous for piglets. So protocols for the newborns and the different vaccines. So this is the second time this has happened, where suddenly the ghost of Halloween past has decided to jump in. So we'll get our lights back up. It could just sort of be mood lighting too. So if you're enjoying that,
it's great.
We'll keep on going with our conversation regardless of what goes on. Anyway, so Brittany's question: protocols for newborns.
Yeah. So newborn piglets, whether a piglet's born inside or born outside, I always want a newborn piglet to get 200 milligrams of iron dextran. It just gets them off to a great start in life. And I know a lot of people just want to give their piglets access to soil, but it's really difficult to understand how much iron they're really getting out of the soil.
Yeah.
And so, it's just a great boost to avoid jaundice in baby pigs. It's something we see in little human babies, and it's something that you can see in baby pigs. So, Brittany, I think iron is a must-do. It just increases the likelihood of those piglets to be successful.
Is that a vaccine protocol?
Yeah, and then for vaccines, at around 21 to 40 days of age, I like swine erysipelas. I really like that vaccine going into pigs. And I also like porcine circovirus, getting that into pigs. And then anything above that, if your farm has had a history of ileitis, we should look at an ileitis vaccine. If you get that bent nose disease, we should vaccinate for that.
Is that the technical term for it? I think
it's
you had
not
a different
the
one.
technical term.
but it's easy to remember.
It's a much easier one to remember.
So all of those things can work out. Okay, Kate, do you offer telemedicine services for people in other provinces? You did talk about sharing pictures and being able to see somebody's operation through that matter. It just says it has vets for emergency services, but swine vets aren't common in that particular area. So about 20 to 50 animals on a farm at a time for them, and it's a pasture operation. So do you need to be on site? Can you do some of these things through telemedicine?
So we can. So we can do a lot through telemedicine. We can do a lot through someone's iPhone, collecting some video, collecting some pictures. We can take a look at the animal. And sometimes we know right away what's going on. And if we don't, we can guide people through sampling protocols, help them collect tissues, bloods, fecal samples. And then we can move those off to a diagnostic lab for further follow-up. And we're very capable of doing that. It's, the technology out there right now makes this so simple. Well,
and clearly further away from some veterinary services, but just in our current environment with this year, considering everything that's been going on, surely that telemedicine has been ramped up a little bit rather than actually seeing people face to face or mask to mask.
Yeah, I mean, we really started doing telemedicine when we started working in Asia. And so, I used to fly to China 4 times a year. Now with COVID, we're not flying near as much. But even before COVID, we would do barn walks in China, in Japan, in the Philippines all the time. And we can do so much with technology today. So, happy to do that here in Canada.
I want a couple of more things before we get ready to wrap up. So if you do have some questions, now's the time to pop in there, or comments, because your comments have been really good here so far as well. But is there a common question that you get from producers, either large scale, medium, or small, that seems to show up on a regular basis? What are you being asked primarily, I guess, is what it boils down to.
There's a few things that always jump out. Commercial farms are always asking about how do we prevent these big diseases, Egan? We've got ASF in the world. What do we do to stop that? We've got PED devastating producers around the world. And in North America, what do we do to stop that? So I get a lot of biosecurity questions, big questions around keeping diseases out. At this time of year, I start getting a lot of questions on influenza.
Mm-hmm. Flu season, not just for people.
Flu season, and we had a classic example last year, a barn with 13 employees. One of them didn't get vaccinated, got the flu, went into the barn. 3 days later, the pigs start coughing and sneezing. And so I get a lot of that as well. We get a lot of real straightforward questions from smallholder producers on feed and feeding. What are the essentials? What are the things we can't miss with feeding? And, with pigs, there's essential amino acids that they cannot produce themselves. They've got to eat those amino acids. And they have to get that from their feed. These are protein supplements. And so, you need to have a feed with these essential amino acids, even if you have 3 pigs in the backyard. Those are critical. We get a lot of basic husbandry questions. How do I get my sow pregnant? Where can I find a boar? How do I get that? How do I help the boar figure out what to do for the first time?
So you're porkmatch.com basically.
It's porkmatch.com.
Sometimes.
We have to cover all those bases. We're teaching people how to preg check their sows with ultrasound. We're getting a lot of questions just like the ones we've had on how to deworm. Do we have to worry about disease transmission between the kids that want to play with the pigs and the pigs? We get a lot of those simple, common questions, and they're great questions.
And that's part where some of that material that's on that website that you mentioned, you can access some of that and get a little bit more information. But there was a question about rotating dewormers for pasture operations. So instead of just going with one set, do you need to rotate? Is it seasonal, or is it just in order to cast a wider net?
Yeah, so we have different classes of dewormers available today. So we have some injectable ones that are very broad spectrum, and they also work really well with parasites on the skin. We have some dewormers that we give orally that will give protection for 10 to 14 days, and they'll kill all stages of the worm. And then we have some really basic dewormers that only kill one stage of a 4-stage life cycle of a worm, and they're a nice little thing, but the farm can easily reinfect themselves. And so that's a great conversation to have with your veterinarian. I find sometimes we get into those 1-day dewormers, and if we don't get the whole herd done on the same day and then we don't repeat it 2 or 3 more times, we just never get rid of those parasites. And so there's some great products like ivermectin injectable, this very broad spectrum, does internal and external parasites, and will do a great job for your herd, versus a simple product, a permethrin that won't do much at all.
One more question here, Poppy and Tara. Chemical castrations, options, pros and cons.
Yeah, so there is only one product label for non-surgical castration in Canada, and it's actually a vaccine. It's not a chemical, it's a vaccine. And it doesn't give castration forever. It just creates, it blocks GnRH, which prevents male behavior. But the vaccine is equally effective in females as it is in males. And it only works for a period of time. And so...
so what would the advantage of that be?
So the advantage of that is you don't have to do a surgical castration. So you avoid that procedure. You also get the advantage of leaving the testicles in the male pig, and those testicles produce testosterone, and that enhances growth. The disadvantage to that, though, is when you leave those testicles in, we get this phenomena known as boar taint. And every once in a while, if you've ever eaten a boar or an uncastrated male, the pork has this really strong, vibrant smell. And some people, it knocks them on their back. Some people don't even notice it. But that's one of the core reasons why we castrate, is to get rid of boar taint. Obviously, male aggression is a huge issue with putting boars together. So the boar taint vaccine is used. It's not used a lot. It's not used a lot in the world, but it is available. Yeah.
Very interesting. Learning something new every day. Yeah. I want to set up what we're going to be doing next week. So just while I'm doing this, give us one more takeaway, something that maybe we haven't touched on or whatever, but one thing you want everyone who's been viewing, who's going to look at this down the road, because we get a lot of views after the fact. Maybe people are busy at this time, they can't live stream, but we'll look at it later. So one takeaway, something to think about, and I'll give you a few moments to do so, just as we get ready to wrap things off. So we have been talking a little bit about some backyard operations. We're going to expand on that, as I mentioned, for next Thursday's Stewardship Session, October 22nd, 7 p.m. We will discuss backyard agriculture, and our special guest will be Dr. Karen Allen. So backyard agriculture, that could be pretty much everything we've already talked about and we're planning to. So this should be pretty varied. No doubt there will be a lot of people with different perspectives and different questions. So we'll be all over the map next week, but it should be really, really fun and fascinating conversations. We'll have that for you next week. So a takeaway, the thing that you want when people walk away from this, what's the takeaway you want them to have?
Maybe the big one for me tonight is establish a relationship with your veterinarian. Whether that veterinarian is a mixed animal practitioner or a companion animal practitioner or a swine practitioner, establish a relationship with a veterinarian. We are there to help. Mm-hmm. We are extremely motivated, passionate about animal health, animal welfare, and in things I do every day. Anytime we can focus on animal health and animal welfare, we help food safety and we help food security. Yeah. And so, get in touch with a veterinarian, reach out to us, whether you have 2 pigs or 2,000 pigs, work with a veterinarian. It will only make the herd healthier and stronger.
And again, prevention is everything. If you can keep from having to treat, it's going to save you a lot of cash and protect your herd, because they could be. Is that a herd? Is it a herd of pigs?
It is a herd of pigs. Yeah, it is a herd of pigs. And so
it can protect your animals, and that's obviously vital for anybody's bottom line.
Yeah, I want people to reach out to us sooner rather than later. There's nothing more heartbreaking as a veterinarian when someone lets something go for 3 or 4 days too long, and by time we get phoned, there's nothing we can do at that stage, or there's very little we can do. Yeah. Reach out as soon as possible. Let's focus on prevention. Let's focus on disease management and animal health and animal care.
Outstanding. Dr. Egan Brockhoff, this has been fun, and I've learned a lot, by the way. Maybe on my acreage I need to get some pigs.
I think that's a great idea.
I know who to talk to. Thank you so much. This has been great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for joining in the live stream. All of you who put in your comments and questions, thank you very much for helping to add to this conversation. It really makes a huge difference. And for all of those who will be watching the archive version afterwards, I'm sure that added a little bit of extra spice to this stewardship session. Once again, we'll be back again next Thursday, October 22nd at 7 p.m. We'll be talking about backyard agriculture, wide open, next week. Thanks for watching tonight. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.